and welcome to our channel Penny Lesson. We talk about everything finance, from tips on making money and proper investing to news about the different economies and situations affecting the global markets. The goal of this channel is not only to teach you how to be more financially responsible but also to teach you how to be more aware of global events. So why not just sit back and relax while we tell you what's happening in the finance sphere? Be sure to subscribe to my channel and hit the notification bell to be constantly updated on my latest videos. Remember, one penny lesson a day keeps being penny less away. Jim Rickards is well versed in the political and economic upheavals of the last half-millennium. In this video, he describes a depression happening in the US right now and how it affects everyone. This might be the biggest news we could receive about the upcoming crash. Stay tuned and keep watching to find out more. In my opinion, a global depression has existed since 2007. According to technical definitions, 2 consecutive quarters of dropping GDP and rising unemployment constitute a recession. We are seeing growth, but if we're in the 10th year of an expansion, how can we be in a depression? The common misconception about depression is the cause, according to this response. Depression is a prolonged period of growth that is below trend but without a clear tendency to either collapse or resume trend growth. In other words, if you're running at 2% when trend growth is 3 to 3.5%, that discrepancy suppresses growth. Yes, you had growth. Technically, you are not in a recession. Nevertheless, because you are not returning to that trend, you are in a depression. Debt is growing more quickly than the economy. Debt, is it good or bad? Debt can be beneficial if you can manage it and use it for worthwhile endeavors. It's awful if you're using it to replace genuine growth because it will all crash. Debt cannot be understood in a vacuum. You must comprehend how debt and revenue relate. Although debt is increasing, the GDP is not growing very much. The ratio of debt to GDP is getting worse. It appears that a global debt crisis is on the horizon. Every year, the Fed will tighten 4 times. Unless one of the 3 halt conditions holds true. Specifically, when disinflation or deflation spirals out of control, employment starts to drop, and when stock markets see a chaotic decline. Since none of those 3 pause criteria currently apply, you can anticipate the Fed to continue raising rates even though there is no doubt that they are over-tightening. They are also attempting to reduce the balance sheet and bring interest rates back to normal. But the Fed is now faced with a conundrum. What will they do if the U.S. economy enters a recession? History demonstrates that the Fed must cut interest rates by about 4 percentage points to bring the economy out of a downturn. How, then, do you lower interest rates by 4%? You cannot, is the response. What do you do next? We'll start printing money once more. Modern monetary theorists might disagree, as seen by the Fed's efforts to shrink its balance sheet. The Fed is attempting to raise rates and reduce its balance sheet to be able to revert to its playbook in the event of a recession. However, there is a conundrum. Is it possible to normalize interest rates and the balance sheet without contributing to the recession you are prepared to treat? I believe the response is no. I believe that they will likely bring about the recession by trying to tighten it to prepare for the next one. Other than during QE, no evidence can predict how this will turn out. The value of assets skyrocketed. Asset prices rise when money is printed, while they fall when money is destroyed. The Fed is reducing the amount of money available by destroying money. This balance sheet reduction is probably equivalent to 4 additional rate increases per year. They'll undoubtedly cause a recession by doing this. A recession has never been predicted by the Fed. I anticipate that the yield curve will invert, GDP will decrease, and job creation will also decline. Although there isn't a full-fledged recession, there are just enough warning signs that the Fed may change course and pause at one of these sessions. As soon as it is decided that we can't escape the run, the price of gold will soar. We are unable to return to normal because doing so would destroy the economy, forcing us to take a step back. Gold will shine at that time because it will be abundantly clear that the Fed cannot exit its easy money policy. I approach forecasting in a very different way than Wall Street analysts. A good social science study demonstrates that economists do worse than skilled monkeys when it comes to forecasting. I don't mean that in a derogatory way. A monkey does not know, right? Therefore, if you ask a monkey about a binary outcome, it will be accurate 50% of the time and incorrect 50% of the time. For two reasons, economists are mistaken more than 50% of the time. Both their models and group behavior are flawed, according to number one. An economist would rather be wrong than risk going against the crowd and possibly being right. But if it turns out you were mistaken, you're in the open. Institutional restrictions exist, and people seek to preserve their employment. Other things are more important to them than doing it well. America's forecasting is poor. They do so because they employ equilibrium models. Forget your equilibrium model because capital markets are not equilibrium systems. They apply the efficient market theory, which holds that the market cannot be outperformed since all the information is available. We are aware that markets are not efficient. They employ stress tests, which have flaws because they are based on historical data while we are constantly operating in the present. Future events could very well differ greatly. Nothing in that history will show you how bad it can get if the next crisis is worse. They presume that prices move smoothly and continually. Trading can be exited any place in between, which is where stop losses and all these portfolio insurance models come from. Markets don't operate like that. They simply gap up instead of hitting the intermediate stages when they gap down as they move along. Either you are significantly in debt, or you were blindsided by a profitable opportunity. In other words, all of their models completely misrepresent how markets behave. It follows that the inaccurate forecasting is not surprising. We discussed business cycle recessions and depressions earlier. This is standard economic analysis. That's growth, trend growth, below trend growth, business cycles, etc. Thinking. A financial panic or collapse is something else entirely. An economic panic differs from a downturn or an upturn in the market. They cannot be combined, but they are not required to. Therefore, let's discuss financial panics separately. According to complexity theory, an exponential function of scale is the worst thing that can happen to a system. Just how huge is it? That is scale. You must now discuss your scaling metrics. We are discussing the derivative's gross notional value. We are referring to the stock market's typical daily volume. We're discussing debt. We might be discussing each of those topics. It would probably take years of empirical research to improve this since this is a new field of science. However, the theory is sound and can be applied somewhat haphazardly. In other words, the growth increased by a factor of 10, 50, etc. if you tripled the system. With that, there exist several exponential functions. Debt to GDP ratios are significantly worse, and debt is substantially greater. Derivatives with a higher gross notional value and total notional value. People read the BIS statistics and conclude that the bank's gross notional value derivatives have been declining, which is true, but that conclusion is false. They are sending a large portion of that traffic to clearing houses. As a result, it has never been on the balance sheet and has always been off of it. However, even if you utilize the footnotes, the number of banks has decreased, but only because clearing houses are being included instead. Who is providing clearinghouse guarantees? No, the risk still exists. It was only recently moved. Derivatives, debt, and concentration are, therefore, relevant metrics. The 5 biggest banks in America own a larger proportion of overall banking assets than they did in 2008. Therefore, increased concentration is a risk factor. Considering this, it is safe to predict that the upcoming crisis will be significantly worse than the past one. That is a factual assertion supported by complexity theory. You can either think that we won't ever experience a crisis, to which I reply, well, we did in 1987. You did in 1994. We did in 1998. You had the dot-com crash in 2000. You had the mortgage crash in 2007. And you had Lehman in 2008. Don't try to convince me that these things don't occur. They do every 5, 6, and 7 years. The point is that this crisis will occur because crises usually do, and because of the scaling metrics I described, it will get exponentially worse. Is anyone up for that? In other words, the issue has not changed. Instead, we simply receive larger bailouts at greater levels. What exceeds the size of central banks? Only one organization and one balance sheet in the world has the authority to rescue central banks, and that is the IMF. The IMF generates its currency. The special drawing is the SDR, correct? The currency is global. The simplest way to approach it is in that manner. There is a printing press there. Because central banks don't normalize before the crisis, that will be the only source of liquidity in the next crisis. Where does the liquidity come from if it appears they won't be able to continue because they will run out of runways, and they can only increase the balance sheet by a tiny amount without damaging confidence? The IMF is the source, is the reply. That is the type of global monetary reset. Then, there you have it. What do you think of Jim's takeaways about the ongoing depression in the US? How do you think it will affect the world? Do you agree? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Wow, was that news? Why not ponder it? Want to know the latest? Comment if you want more articles like this. This video is just one of many videos on my channel that brings you the latest news about the world of global finance and economics. So go hit that subscribe button if you don't miss out on content like these. If you enjoyed this video, please hit the like button. Thank you for all your support, and I'll see you again next time. Remember, 1 penny lesson a day keeps being penny less away. Cheers.